So in this week's episode of Make It with Calvin, I'm going to be talking about how I keep my nylon filament from getting super damp while living in San Francisco in a house that, well, quite frankly, is pretty damp. So if you're like me, I love the strength of nylon and the fact that it makes such nice, tough prints, although it does have the problem of being warp prone. And it also has the problem of being super moisture absorbent and also super moisture sensitive. Now, in comparison, if I left a spool of nylon out overnight and went to run it, the print quality would drop drastically from a dried state to a wet state versus something like a PLA where you might start to notice a little bit of, say, fuzziness or stringing or things like that. But in reality, the overall change is not going to be very much. With nylon, though, you definitely start to notice it. So the first step is making sure it stays dry in the first place. So what I like to do to keep my nylon dry is store it properly. So to do that, let me go pull up my set equipment and I'll show you guys. Okay, so my preferred way of storing all my filaments, especially my nylons, is this. It's a 5-gallon bucket that you can get at any hardware store. They're dirt cheap. And I also went ahead and spent a couple of bucks and picked up this. It's a really nice screw-on lid that snaps into the top here. It's commonly used by people who store bulk food items such as grain, wheat, seeds, flour, things like that, but it also works great for storing your filament. So this in and of itself is good, but you really need something in there to keep it dry. In my case, that is 4 pounds of indicating silica gel beads in the bottom. Now, one thing I will say is it's pretty annoying to go sticking your filament in there because every time you pull it out, you're going to get beads everywhere. It's a mess. So I came up with this. I know what you're thinking. This is what I use to cook up my hamburgers with in the backyard, but I swear it's not, although you could use it for that. This is a grill that I picked up off Amazon that I'll have linked to in the description. And I've brazed on these 4 little legs on the bottom. And don't worry, if you don't know how to braze, you don't have brazing equipment, you could probably very easily whip up your own little legs on your 3D printer and life would be good. I just chose to braze them on there because let's face it, I have the access to do that. It was really simple, job done. So the future plan for this is I'm going to actually mount a small Peltier heater unit with a fan in the bottom. And in off-camera testing, I've had very good results with that, not only warming up the bucket that the filament is in, but over the course of a day or two, taking ridiculously wet nylon and making it much drier. I'm gonna have a video on that in the future though. But the main point is elevate your spools above the desiccant that you have in the bottom. It'll make your life a lot easier. Like I said, you don't need something this complex, but just something is better than nothing. Now I know what you guys are probably saying is, well, Calvin, I've got a microwave, I've got an oven, why can't I use that to dry my filament? Well, first of all, don't even think about trying the oven. I have tried the oven. It was a literal nightmare. Not only did it melt a spool worse than this, it also caused all the water that was inside the filament to instantly turn into steam. Because the filament was softened, it literally just swelled up like a Rice crispy puffy thing. It was a disaster. So don't even think about microwaving your filament to dry it because microwaves excite the water molecules. It's just bad idea. Don't even try. And the next option is you can put it in the oven, and I personally do not recommend doing this, especially because I find that most ovens in the low temperature range that you need to be running to dry your filament just are not stable enough. This is sort of maybe what happened with this spool right here. Is it was in the oven and it got a little too close to the top and the heat radiated down and might or might not have melted the spool a little bit. I promise the oven is still fine, don't worry, but that was a little bit embarrassing. So that said though, if your only option to dry your filament is the oven, even though I do not recommend doing it, here are a couple of handy tips. One, put your spools in the middle of the oven, but elevate them up about 1 inch or 2 off the baking rack that it's on. The idea is you want air to move around it. 2, set your oven to the lowest temperature, and 3, find a way if you can to crack the door open at least 2 inches, so that way you're going to have the air flowing through the oven, not staying inside the oven, causing the heat to get really high and cause your spools to get all warpy and potentially even melt your filament, cause a fire, everything like that. Which also goes without saying, don't dry your filament in the oven if you're not going to be present to double check. Nothing's going to happen. I'm serious. I don't want you guys burning your houses down, starting kitchen fires, all that stuff. I have a whole story about the neighbors next door, previous neighbors next door who lit their kitchen on fire, and that was a disaster one morning.